It's time to rank all the legendary artifacts in Call of Dragons, and I got to do some fighting recently, which means it's pretty fresh in my mind which ones actually do the very best, so stick around in this video for my musings on artifacts. If you want to know which ones are worth investing and which ones work in the long term, this video's got your answers. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons, and we're going to go in and rank every single legendary on a tier list. I have done this several times in the past and I will do this again in the future, so consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on the next update. Let's kick things off with a bang and let's put the new artifact onto the list. All the way at the S tier, baby. This new artifact is sick. Movement speed, damage, you don't have to target. I found that targeting makes artifacts very hard to use when you're using multiple artifacts on the field at a time. So this artifact is doing basically everything I want. I think it's one of the most powerful in the game. It is awesome. And on the topic of artifacts that are very powerful, let's stick with that. I've ranked this one before. It's the Infernal Flame. Use it on Lily and Velen, and this thing absolutely slaps. It's really designed to be with Lilia. So wherever she goes, this thing goes. Next artifact I want to talk about, let's do the Mirage Orb. I wish I had one of these. I don't. It's powerful. It stuns. You put it on mages. It's meant for Bert Tohar. It does very good. I've seen people do crazy things with this. I don't have one, but I've seen enough of it and been hit by enough of it to know that it freaking hurts, man. And one final artifact I want to include at this tier is the old Spirit Bone Torque, all right? Spirit Bone Torque is fantastic. Right now, in the season I'm in, they're testing troops being able to pass through each other, so no physical blocking, which means the Spirit Bone Torque is the only way to actually have infantry do infantry things, which is tanking hits. So yeah, right now, Spirit Bone Torque is very, very good for infantry. I would rank them in that order. Now from here, we jump down to the A tier, and this is where things get a little bit weird. I have moved a lot of things around from where I've had them in the past. So first and foremost, let's start with these guides, the blades, all right? These blades are very powerful. They're very good in Roots of War, and in particular, if you are running cavalry or defending your city, and you're using Bakshi, these things slap. The downside is that cavalry, I can definitely with 100% accuracy confirm, are not amazing. They do not win the most important fights in your season. Not that I've seen. Maybe you could get enough cavalry and do a cav rush, and that could work, but I haven't seen it yet, and I doubt that I ever will. So it's powerful, but it's a cav thing, and so that does limit its relevance, but it is really, really good for what it is. Also really stinking good for what it is the Warhammer. That is also something I wish I had. I'm gonna put it in an A. In a world in which infantry can walk through enemies, you don't need to be as tanky, and so doing damage is really good. It's kind of like the infantry equivalent of the Phoenix Eye, which I also think is really goated. Both of those are just a ton of area of effect damage. Granted, they're both 5% artifacts, but I think they deserve to be up there for that amount of damage that they deal, which brings us to the Gold Crest. And due to the autocast, I think I can rank this higher than I would have before, okay? The problem I have with Gold Crest was always targeting. It is still always targeting, and it is very powerful when it works. I find that I have to run it on auto, otherwise all kinds of targeting issues with this thing where they're out of range, but then I have to move to get into range and blah, blah, blah. Auto means that you're not going to hit, a really cool thing in a clutch moment probably, but at least it shoots. So that's where I'm at with Gold Crest. At least it shoots. All right. From here, we can talk about the Rattle Spear. And I used to rank this higher, and I honestly almost think I need to rank it lower. I'm struggling to do that because it has a nice passive effect. But the problem with the Rattle Spear is you actually have to stand still to use it. That kind of sucks. If you could be moving while using it, it would be better. It probably has always been this way, and I didn't notice as much, but I find I am moving more than ever. And maybe if you are using the long range talent so that you can be at the same range as mages, you don't need to move as much as I have been. So I'll leave it at A, but I'm ranking it lower than it was because I have come to find that I am moving a lot more than I used to, and that's not amazing. Now this brings us to Viola's Bow and also the Shadow Blades. Two truly exceptional marksman options that are, well, one is free to play in the Shadow Blades, the other you need to obtain. I would probably skip the Viola's Bow, personally, and just use the Shadow Blades. And instead of doing Viola's Bow, just use so many of the other amazing marksman artifacts. There just are so many of them, all right? From here, we're going to go and we're going to put the Dragon Scale Armor on the list. The thing is that in a world in which you can just ignore infantry, dragon scale armor is not as cool as it once was. Now, it is very good in Roots of War, but if the developers stick with the world in which infantry and all units can pass through each other, which is what we have in our season now, I mean, look, this is supposed to be a list where you can invest in things, right? Right now, it's not a good investment because it's not as relevant as it was when you had to actually hit the infantry that were in front of you instead of just ignoring them. Okay, so I put it there. From here, we're going to put Oath of the Storm Peak. It's a cavalry thing. It's actually really good, but I don't use cavalry anymore. So I can't rank it higher. I don't use cavalry. All right. And this brings us to the old poison debuff right over here. I can't remember the name of it offhand. I use it. It is a fat AoE poison debuff. You have to actually get this from a Forge of Light, so it is very expensive for a 5% artifact. Granted, the 10 targets that can get hit with a defense break is sweet. I wish the area of this was twice as large. Then I would be ranking it higher than it is. If you hit 5 units, that's probably looking good for what that will actually do, especially if you use multiple armies in combat. You got to be in dot mode. Chances are you're just going to hit a small number of things. So I think it's fine. I don't think it's as good as it used to be back when everybody was using smaller number of marches and actually playing zoomed in. All right. From here, the Kingslayer, always a classic and always will be. Very powerful. Also, Fang of Ashkari, 2 truly exceptional artifacts that do their job. All right. The Fang of Ashkari is extremely versatile, and I can recommend it in a variety of marches. It's just defense. But hey, if you're going to run cavalry, you probably want to use a Fang of Ashkari if you're actually going to run in an enemy, which is weird, but like, you need those defensive stats more than you know. All right. On the topic of defensive stats, we got the Harp. Hey, if you're defending your city, it's pretty good in the early game. It's very versatile. Okay. Unfortunately, not as synergistic with Bakshi as I would like, but I've covered that in a separate video. I won't go in depth on that here. All right. From here, we can talk about some mobility artifacts. These actually transport your march. Both of them I find to be very good, the Storm Arrows and the Wolf Woman of Healer. However, they were better when infantry could actually physically stop an enemy. You could do some things with these that were really disgusting. You can't do that anymore. You look at, they're just testing it in the server I'm in, but if that goes global, then that's going to be the situation. All right. So can't say they're a good investment right now, but they are very cool. And for utility, jumping over mountains and things, very fun. For hunting your pets, having a, march that goes around that can go over rivers or 2. Really nice. Okay. From here, Sorlin's Blade. It's just not as good as the Kingslayer, I will argue. We've got the dagger over here. What is it? Dragon's Bane? Dragon something dagger. Really cool single target damage, and this is really cool AoE damage for infantry. I actually think these may have more relevance now than they used to, because infantry, well, I mean, if you're not going to get focused, you need to do damage. So these may get bumped up in my rankings, actually, because of the importance of infantry being more like bruisers than they were before. So those are the ones that I would say, if anything, I am underrating in this list. I don't think I'm underrating this guy, though. This is a shielding artifact. It's designed for Thea. I don't know. It's just not what I want her to be doing somehow. I have a hard time articulating why. I just think it's not as exciting as it ought to be. Maybe because Thea mostly just lives on my bench. Maybe that's it. And the developers keep giving us more and more stamina, which means I'm actually less likely to use her, right? The more ways I have to increase my stamina, the more likely I am to use my same 4 or 5 most powerful marches over and over and over, and she's not in those pairings. So I think C is a fine place for that. And I will put Blood Blade Banner down at a D. As soon as you get 7.5% artifacts, they'll be better than the Blood Blade Banner. And I still feel like Tear of Arbon is probably a D. I'm probably underestimating healing. I keep saying this, but like, I could heal 4 or 5 units for like 2,000 health, or I could hit 4 or 5 units for like 10,000 plus damage each. So, yeah, I would rather have the Phoenix Eye or the Warhammer. I don't know. Help me out. What am I missing? Now, from here, there's a bunch of other things that can go in the utility and non-legendary category, but there is one more I need to move around. And it's this guy over here. And I'm probably going to bump it up to the front of B, maybe over here. So what does this do? It increases your normal attack damage, and I think it has defense for marksmen. And it turns out to be really powerful as an option on Zeta and Magrat, that's free to play accessible, which is kind of freaking cool. You can actually use this guy. You get access to it from your artifact keys, and it's actually pretty good. Okay. Now for utility artifacts, I mean, you got some cool stuff. You can teleport. Teleporting is always in style. Okay. You've got the horn, right? Like the springbird feathers, kind of cool. March speed. But it's all utility stuff, right? Peacekeeping damage, right? I mean, Cloak of Invisibility is cool, right? Like, I don't know, people use the ring. They charge in with their cavalry, use a ring, and then people are in dot mode, so they can't see. They're not doing any damage to the thing that's in an ice case for 10 seconds, right? Like, I guess it's an ice block is what I should call it. Stick to your World of Warcraft roots, Chisgule. This game has elves and orcs and humans. Stick to your roots, bro, all right? Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that covers the things you need to know about the artifacts, all right? So the ones at the top of the list, I think, are the better investments compared to the ones at the bottom of the list, which I think are not as good investments. But like I said, I think infantry DPS artifacts could see a boost. So be on the lookout for that. And depending on what happens with cavalry, I don't know. Those artifacts could also all get bumped up a tier if they become more relevant. Right now, they aren't. Now, in Roots of War, hey, yo, cavalry do the work, okay? Which is weird. This is why it's hard to balance cavalry, is they're fine for the things that don't matter for whether or not you win your season, but they are not fine for the fights that determine who wins or loses your season. So I don't know how to balance that, but I'm not a developer, so I don't have to. And a big thank you to the developers for sponsoring today's video. Let's go! I'm having a lot of fun playing Call of Dragons. I still really enjoy it. So if you're looking for more information about how our season's been going, or maybe you just want to see how I'd rank the heroes, check the cards in the end screen. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.